Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Ruth and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and the research I am talking about today was part of our master's student Ben Robison's master's project that he completed over the summer. And Ben is an ag teacher here in the state of Nebraska, and he was interested to look at how agricultural educators use social media to engage their stakeholders in their community. He was interested in social media because he saw this as an opportunity to really connect with his community. We've seen through research that we can use social media to deliver information about agricultural issues to our stakeholders, as well as communicate and promote events we might have coming up. We've also seen recommendations for really leveraging social media to our advantage by having long-term goals for our communication and identifying appropriate audiences. Researchers have also recommended that the FFA organization really capitalize on using social media to better strengthen their mission and support their brand with their stakeholder audiences. When we were looking at this study, we decided to use the Shannon-Weaver model of communication, which is a very simple, one of the original models of communication, where you have a sender who sends a message that a receiver receives. Pretty straightforward. And in this case, we were particularly interested in looking at the sender, who in this case were agricultural educators, looking at their perceptions of social media and looking at the messages that they were sending out there to the receivers, which in this case were their community stakeholders. So the purpose of this research was to identify how these different agricultural programs were using different types of social media channels to meet the needs of those stakeholders. Specifically, we wanted to see how often they were sharing information, how effective they viewed different platforms for sharing information, the types of information that they were posting, and then finally, looking to see if they were using social media to collaborate with other teachers within their area, because we have seen that collaboration is an important part to help retain those young ag teachers. So the methods that Ben used were to distribute an online survey to a listserv of Nebraska agricultural educators. He followed Dillman's tailored design, where he sent 3 follow-up emails, and the survey was open for 3 weeks. He ended up receiving a 30.4% response rate, which for ag teachers during a pandemic, I think was pretty good. He had 82 responses total, majority of them being female, and about 50% of them were 40 or younger. The instrument consisted of 17 total questions, but we were just reporting 4 within this study, and the survey was reviewed by a panel of experts prior to distribution. We're just reporting simple descriptive data for this study, so we don't have a whole lot to talk about as far as analysis. Now, what Ben found was that 54% of his sample were posting to Facebook 1 to 3 times a week, which is following that advice of consistently posting to your social media sites. And about 1/3 of his sample were posting to Instagram 1 to 3 times a week. What was really interesting and not super surprising was the majority did find Facebook to be very effective to communicate to their community stakeholders, but 1/3 of them reported Twitter was also very effective, but not very many of them actually used Twitter to communicate, often at least, and they also didn't identify Instagram to be very effective, despite 1/3 of them posting to it 1 to 3 times a week. Also, they were not really using Snapchat to communicate to their stakeholders, and they didn't find it to be very effective either. As far as information that was being shared, overwhelming majority were just posting contest results for their stakeholders to be able to see. There were also quite a few posts related to community service projects that their chapter might have been doing, as well as very simple, straightforward chapter announcements, but not a whole lot of two-way communication, very one-way communication. Here's an update about what we have going on and what we have been doing. We also asked about potential collaboration and how ag teachers might use social media to collaborate with one another. About 40% said, I'd be very likely to use social media to gain ideas for chapter activities, also providing help to other ag teachers, and a little bit less said, I would like to use social media to collaborate on lesson plans as well. So we did see there was an interest in that collaboration aspect. So what we found overall were teachers held these favorable attitudes towards social media. Ben suggested this might be because his sample did skew a little bit towards the younger side, so these might be people who are more comfortable using social media anyways. Facebook was also viewed as effective in sharing information, and it was often used, which was good to see. But on the other hand, Twitter wasn't used that often, even though it was viewed as effective, and then Instagram was used often, even though it was not viewed as effective. So there seems to be some differences there between how comfortable or how often they use these programs versus how effective they think it should be. Also, overwhelmingly, social media was used for one-way communication, which as an ag communication faculty member, that's not really how we recommend using social media. So we want to look at ways to encourage that two-way communication to actually engage our community stakeholders instead of just delivering information to them. Also, another positive we saw was that they were interested in using social media for collaboration, which is great because collaboration has been identified as a way to help retain those new and those younger ag ed teachers. As far as recommendations, there's a lot we can do with this related to professional development for both pre-service teachers and current teachers. Partnering with AgCom programs and faculty, I think, is a really great way to start developing those PD programs within your agricultural education discipline. Focusing those programs on teaching how to create two-way communication by asking questions, getting people involved, so it's not just delivering kind of one-off communication to the stakeholders. Similarly, developing long-term goals for communication too, so that way you can have steady communication with those stakeholders, and identifying strategy and support for collaborations for those future and those new teachers. As far as future research, we should identify our stakeholders' preferred channels for information as well to help better tailor those PD events that we might host in the future and replicate this in other states and nationally to get a more generalizable result. So with that, that is all that I have, and I thank you for your time.